All right, now it's election countdown, November 3rd. Is only 39 days away now. And as I always remind folks, there are people voting even now. But as mail-in voting begins in many states, the issue of their security remains in question. An FBI investigation is underway right now in the battleground state of Pennsylvania after 9 mail-in ballots were found in the dumpster outside a Board of Elections office. Joining us now to weigh in is Heritage Foundation legal fellow Hans von Spakovsky. Hans, thank you, sir, for joining us. We don't know exactly what's going on here. The FBI is supposed to investigate. But what kinds of thoughts do this bring to mind for you?
Well, it appears this may have been what are called UACAVA ballots. Those are ballots for our overseas military personnel. And if, in fact, they were thrown out by election officials, that may have been an attempt to disenfranchise and prevent those individuals from voting. But keep in mind, look, absentee ballots are a problem. Look, the Texas Attorney General just announced over 130 felony charges against individuals in Texas engaged in tampering with and apparently stealing absentee ballots. And that just illustrates, as does Philadelphia, some of the many problems with voting this way.
Let's talk about the problems in the system. Because you could send out a bunch of ballots. That doesn't mean they all come back. But there are nefarious activities going on, which you're referring to. So where are the biggest risks that actually something fraudulent could take place?
Well, the biggest risk is that absentee ballots, if they are simply mailed to every registered voter, well, the problem is voter registration rolls are in notoriously bad shape. They are inaccurate. They are filled with people who no longer live at the addresses, people who are dead. And there's also a problem with individuals not registering at residences where they live, but at commercial addresses. This problem is so big that last week a report came out from the Public Interest Legal Foundation finding over 140,000 potential cases of fraud from the 2016 and 2018 election, including, by the way, people registered in more than one place, in more than one state, who voted twice, often using absentee ballots.
But when you see the FBI director, Christopher Wray, testifying there is not widespread fraud, how do you respond to that?
Well, I would respond that how in the world would he know? He hasn't done any kind of nationwide study. And like I said, last week there was a report that came out, a very credible report, on 140,000 potential cases from the last 2 federal elections. And I know for certainty that the FBI has not reviewed or looked into any of those cases that have been brought to the public.
So what do you think needs to be done? I understand the idea of going, nothing makes me feel more American than going in and actually voting in person. And I get that. And I understand why that's the best way to do it. But if there are going to be mail-in votes, what keeps that nefarious activity from happening?
Well, the biggest thing for people to understand is, one, they need to vote as soon as possible. Because the other big problem with absentee ballots is you're depending on the U.S. Postal Service to deliver them on time. And the evidence shows often, unfortunately, they don't do that. So if you're going to vote with an absentee ballot, one, do it in secret in your home and do not allow strangers in your front door who want to talk to you about doing that, like campaign staffers and other activists. And frankly, don't mail it back. Hand deliver it. Go drop it off at the county election headquarters or other places where they potentially are receiving ballots so that you are not dependent on the Postal Service and third parties to do that.
I think California allows anybody to turn in your ballot, and doesn't that could lead to ballot harvesting. Now, I think we know how they're going to vote for president, but this does lend itself to people collecting them and maybe throwing out some they don't like and putting in some they do like.
No, that's exactly right. Look, any good political consultant knows from their records how people in a particular neighborhood vote. And if you wanted to basically mess up an election, you could send your people into that neighborhood saying, hey, I'll be happy to deliver your ballot. And if you know those are voters who in the past have voted for the opposite political party, why then you could simply trash those ballots and make sure they're never delivered. And that's another key problem, particularly in places like California that allow strangers to deliver your ballot.
That's right. But who knows? It could be happening also in other places in the swing states, which is where this is all going to come down. Thank you very much, Hans.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.